Welcome to episode 1 of Cloth Talk. This is my third attempt at this. My phone overheated the first 2 times, which I'm very upset about. But um, a little Sunday morning thing, 10, 15 minutes during football season. Sometimes you may not get out of church till 1:15, 1:30, and that's unfortunate. So, a little conversation, little talk, modern day conversation about, what's on my mind. And because this has been a very tumultuous week, a crazy, unreal, out of body week that, you know, it can never happen. You never think it happened to you till it happens. So, um, one situation I can speak on, my mother and my auntie did, pass away in a car accident a couple of days ago. And um, the last conversation we had on the phone was about me doing something like this. And, um, she was pretty happy about it. So I have to make it happen at this point. But, the main reason why I wanted to do it was, something that really bothered me most of the week was we had a situation where a sheep emerged amongst our group of wolves. And, one thing about that whole situation is, things happen. We'll go a little bit deeper into that. But the main thing that really upset me was, when conflict arises or anything bad happens, something should be said. Nobody wanted to say anything. It was all behind closed doors. And, that's not how situations like this improve or situations like that improve. So, oh, nobody wants to talk about it. Okay. So let me, speak on something that is, very strong in my heart. A lot of people, you may know me from coaching. You may know me from music. You may know me from shoes. You may know me from moving totes. It is what it may know me from moving. It is what it is. So, but this is a side of me that I don't necessarily show. So my father is an elder in the church, assistant pastor, leader of the choir, however you want to slice him. Too cool for school. And I see him do these kind of plans, so I know what it is, but I don't have 25, 30 minutes for you guys. The instincts start to get lower and lower, or attention span starts to get lower and lower over, however old we get and technology evolves. So keep it as short as possible. So, these first 2 episodes, I'll go in about communication, positive communication, negative communication. This week will be about positive communication and where it lacks in modern day world and our day-to-day conversation. Next week will be, negative conversation, negative communication, which will ruffle a lot of feathers. So please stay tuned for that. What I mean by negative communication is, relationship abuse, saying too much, not saying enough, which can get to, real, emotional defects to your partner, which is a whole nother situation. We'll talk about that next week. True or false? Is the sky orange or is the sky blue? Sky's orange. Okay. Not a truthful person. Kind words to negative words. Now, I get this. I go through it myself. I've been to schools where you better be able to survive or it's going to be a rough one. And, but I always think of the flip side of that and how missing it is. It's hard to find a synonym to, what the Bible says about communication. A lot of what the Bible speaks on is, truth telling, how valuable the truth is and how invaluable and how demeaning it is to God to speak on or to negatively speak or to not tell the truth. We'll get into a lot of that next week. But there was one verse that stuck out to me when I was reading on to this. So this will be Christian service, Christian channel, Christian lifestyle, Christian person. So we'll go to the book of Romans. I don't know if this is Old Testament or New Testament. My bad. Book of Romans, chapter 14, verse 19, English Standard Version. It'll all be English Standard Version. It's the easiest to understand. So Romans 14:19. So then let us pursue what makes for peace and mutual upbuilding. Pardon me. So then let us pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. So what I got from that was, everything that I've been through this week. There's always a lot of, when you're faced with some sort of controversy, the first thing, especially male instinct, the first thing that you think on is get even, get back, which is, a super modern way to look at things, a super modern way to go about things, especially in today's world. So, but everything that I've went through this week, my mother and my auntie aside, a lot of it in my mind at first was the same thing. Man, I can't believe we're going through this in our friend circle. We've been through this. We've been clicked up for way too long for something like this to happen. But, the things that would make that better, it didn't, you try not to move impulsively. And, sometimes things are so mind boggling, so shocking that you don't have a choice. There's no other way for you to look at something like this. So, um, you know, I I tried to get back my or tried to, step back away from my first thoughts, take a step back and assess things. And, when you say, let us pursue for what makes for peace, that's missing in today's world. So that could be, you know, I I feel the way about how you acted. I may retaliate in the fashion of to get back on how you made me feel rather than say, well, there's a couple ways that you can do it. Rather than, hey, I didn't appreciate that, bro. Or, there was a different way that you can do that. There's a time and a place, and that wasn't the time and the place. Sometimes we don't instinctively go off of that mindset. We go off the idea of, I got to get rid of this feeling. So even if you do succeed in that manner, it only goes so long for you to say, man, what did I get from that? Maybe I should do more of this so I can get more. Uh, I should get more clarity in within myself, which is the absolute worst possible thing you can do. Um, it says for mutual upbringing. I don't think people would be able to comprehend something such as mutual upbringing. Even in times of controversy, even in times of you're being done wrong, even in the times of doing wrong. Granted, it's okay to do wrong. It's not okay to do wrong when you know it's wrong. And that's hard for the human mind to wrap around. So I'm not going to sit here and, debate and try and, because people are going to be stuck in their ways. My big age of 29, I don't expect to do things like this to have somebody wake up and say, oh, boom, I've been doing this wrong, or I felt this way about this. And that's the only way to feel about it. When it's the first, just because it's your first thought doesn't mean it should be your last thought. Things are not thought out as much as they should be in today's world. So, when I sat down and calmly digested everything, like, man, this is messed up, man. We done been locked in for way too long. Even with the situation with my mother and my auntie, man, this is tough. You never think it'll happen to you till it happens to you, and then you don't know what to do. A lot of that, the first level of communication is your relationship with God. And, it doesn't matter how good you are at something. It don't matter how far you've made it. You're never going to go through that checkered tape unless you have a good relationship within yourself mentally and your relationship with God. There's no way around that. I've seen the most talented of peoples go through situations or grow into ideal ways of life, but it's missing. And I hate to see him. I don't want to say I hate to see him fail, but in God's eyes, it's a failure. You tried to walk this walk without me. That's kind of a disrespect. That's a lack of communication. That's a lack of faith. That's a lack of walking by faith. So, granted, it is normal to say, okay, I see 2 plus 2 is 4. I'm going to go with 4 all the way to the end of the route. But there's certain variables that you deal with in life. And boy, after this week, do I know, there's certain things that you don't. That was close. I promised my mother I would not curse on this. I'm doing good. I promise I'm not curse throughout this whole series, this whole cloth talk thing. But, just how upset you can be, how bothersome this stuff can be to you, and how detrimental it can be to your mental. But, it's not the only way to go. So when I say mutual upbringing, when we have that conversation, when that day comes, when that time comes, man, if there's no way to say that life is too short, or you have to wait for this to happen, or that had to happen for this to happen, man, some people have to learn the hard way, and that's the toughest part about it. And that route will happen if you don't have you have a lack of faith and you have a lack of communication. So when I say positive communication is missing in today's world, I mean, hey, bro, I like the shoes, bro. Nice shirt. You feel me? Back in my time, yeah, I gotta fry you for that shirt. I gotta fry you for those shoes. But in the back of my mind, or in the back of my reality, I may not be able to get that shoe. I may not be able to get that shirt. So that's not the way that you channel it. That's not the way that you get it. Because at the end of the day, if you had that same thing, you wouldn't be saying that to that person. So it's just it and there's not a lot of things that go on in this world, especially with the way that the government moves, especially with the way that we treat each other, because of you know what is being stood for in this world. Granted, you stand for something, or you die for anything. And that's a good way to look at it. But if what you stand for is detrimental to your relationship with God, then you don't stand for anything. You stand for ignorance. You stand for yourself. And like I said, you'll never win in that situation. I've seen the happiest stories end in the saddest ways, because they try and walk with, I mean, you can have your family, you can have cousin Josh, you can have this, you can have that. If you don't got God, you don't got nothing, man. And man, if I learned anything this past week is, you know, speak up. If you have a problem with anything, speak up. And if you have to keep repeating yourself, then you go about your way. That's the only way to positively communicate nowadays, because the mind is so against making amends that it'll always be against making yourself, or it'll always be for making yourself feel better. But that's all instinct. That's all in the moment. The plan is to always live in the moment. Always live in the moment. Do not step back and assess when it's that time. Always live in the moment. But that doesn't mean live without your brain. It doesn't mean live without some sort of faith that's walking with you. There's ways to do better. There's ways to be able to say, okay, I was wrong. Okay, I can't do that. Okay, I'm starting to get that too. When my sister's yelling at me or whatever, or something happens and it's unfathomable. Sometimes you got to sit there stuck, like, and if I jump off the bridge, who knows? I may not get back to that bridge. So, going forward, going throughout your week, going throughout your lifetime, man, if something, it's okay to step back. It's okay to say, man, I wish I could have gone about that differently. Maybe I wouldn't be in this situation. Maybe I wouldn't be here. Maybe I would be here if I was able to, but that's not something that's emphasized. That's not something that's focused on this week. Romans chapter 14, verse 19. So then let us pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbringing. So instead of pursuing for that get back, instead of pursuing for, I got to get even, I can't go out like this. Instead of feeding for public opinion, instead of feeding for perception, feed for what got you here, and feed for your faith. Walk for your faith and not for what you see on a daily basis. So when you say your prayers this week, pray for peace, man. Life is not that bad, man. You make best of what the cards your hand have. Make the best of what the cards give you in life. It's not fair. Life is not fair. So don't go through life expecting why, or asking why, or trying to figure out this, trying to figure out that, because you will fail expeditiously, immediately. As fast as you succeed is as fast as you will fail if you're trying to do it by yourself. And if you go out passing out bad energy, it'll boomerang right back to you. Thinking you're doing something good, it'll come see you, and it won't be good. So when you say your prayers this week, when you go about your movements and you go about your conversations this week, understand that there's a way to have those. Especially if it's a conversation that doesn't have a direct solution, there's a way to have those. So positive communication, that's what I got for you guys this week. Next week will be about negative communication, the detriment of it, and the consequences that come with that. So first episode, Cloth Talk in the books. I hope this can help you guys be better people. I'm no angel myself, so don't expect me to go out and be godlike. That's a sin in itself. So I'll always come as I am. And I think, this is a good calling for me. So I appreciate you guys. If I had your ears for this allotted time, I'll do it again. I had fun. I had fun. Just my thoughts that I see on a day-to-day week, how we can be better as people. I'm not running for president. I'm not, I may give a lecture, a sermon here and there, whatever, whatever. But, you know, I'll always be myself. Granted, come as you are. Everything you do in life, be yourself. That's the easiest way to communicate with people as well. So thank you for taking your time to check this out. Best of luck to you and your teams today. Michigan didn't do so hot yesterday. I'm very upset about that. That's another bridge we'll cross. Maybe I'll do another series about them. Not right now. I ain't in the mood for them. So God bless. Peace and love. Talk soon.